Today, I'm going to talk to you about how to keep your digital marketing data analyst job once you have been hired, you've gotten the job offer, you've accepted, and you've joined the team. This is a really important topic because a lot of people feel like they've won already. They're happy, they're celebrating, and then within a month, 3 months, 6 months, maybe even a year, I've seen it in a year, they get let go. And so you can't rest on your laurels, at least not yet. And I want to teach you how to stay vigilant and how to, level up in the company rather than go the opposite way. I am doing this video because someone asked me to do this video. I actually have a free email newsletter where I share my own journey. I've been working 8+ years in the digital marketing sphere. And one of the people which I gave a free coaching call to in my email newsletter asked me for tips on this because I helped him get a job and now he wants to keep his job. So congrats to him. Congrats to you if you're in this situation. First off, props to you for even considering it. Unfortunately, I think a lot of people go in and they aren't even concerned about this, and you are by watching this video. So you're already one step ahead of the process. Now, I do think you should celebrate, you should pat yourself on the back, but you should stay vigilant. First off, getting a job on its own is not easy. There's a lot of competition. You put in a lot of work to get to this point. So I'm not saying you shouldn't celebrate. You should reward yourself. Go out, have a steak dinner, or do whatever you like doing to reward yourself for this achievement. You should celebrate. You should enjoy yourself because life is too short to be punishing yourself at all times and not celebrating and enjoying yourself, especially after a big achievement like that. Now, once you've done that though, you can't be just relaxed and just too carefree. I think that's the big mistake people make. You have to stay vigilant. There's actually something that presidents have after they get elected to be president of the US, and it's called the first 90 days. The first 90 days of their job, it's kind of assessed a lot, and it really kind of sets the stage to see if this president is going to succeed or not based off what they were able to do in the first 90 days. Similarly, you are still kind of on trial, quote unquote, in a way, in your first 90 days. The hiring manager, the company as a whole, has taken a risk to hire you. They've made the best assumptions that they can, and they're very likely right that you are up to snuff and they chose the right person for the job. But especially if they're a startup or smaller business, they're less experienced with hiring. So there's the chance that they, made a mistake. They're risking spending all this money on you, on a new hire, and they're hoping the value you deliver is going to be worth it. And if it's not, at some point they will cut you off and let you go. Some will kind of procrastinate on it, others will be very quick to do so. So at a minimum, your first 90 days, you should really be putting in a lot of effort, and you should really be making forth that you've really succeeded. I personally like to have a few milestones. The first 90 days, otherwise known as the first 3 months, the first 6 months, the first year. I would say once you hit each milestone, you can relax a bit more. I'm not saying you should ever go to a point where you're just cruising and just relaxing all the time. You should still be delivering good work. But I would say after you've hit like a year and a half at a company, that's when you can really feel pretty solid. You should never go to full relaxed mode because I've seen that backfire on people, and then all of a sudden they're now at a risk of being in a job threatening position. But I would say, generally speaking, those milestones will, like each one you hit, you can kind of feel more and more confident that you've locked in this job. And unfortunately, I have seen situations where people are just ignorant of this. They were way too relaxed from the beginning and they weren't hitting certain marks, and over time it just led to them being let go. And unfortunately, I felt like they were a bit too relaxed through the whole process because they just felt like they had this job secured when that wasn't the case. So how can you really make sure you succeed? And we'll give you an example of a success, and we'll call him like Larry, the guy who didn't do this and failed. So first step you want to take, we'll call the success guy Sam. Sam and you should start by defining success metrics with your hiring manager or your real manager once you get hired. But I like to do this once, like during the interview process, but also after you get hired and you get placed with your manager. When you do it during the interview process, it helps you secure the interview and the job offer because they're looking for people who are serious about their job and can pinpoint what you need to do specifically that can be quantified so that you succeed. So the question that I would recommend Sam and you ask is something along the lines of, hey, if I were to succeed at this job and even knock it out of the park, what success metrics would you need to do that? And by the way, this is not just from my experience and expertise. If you look at a lot of other career coaches or successful entrepreneurs like Leila Hormozi, guess what? That's one of the questions they recommend. Leila has posted many YouTube videos recommending you ask that question in the job interview. But once you get the job offer, I'm actually redefining that, emphasizing that, and trying to make sure they quantify it at least as much as possible. Sometimes they'll give you a more qualitative answer. Like one time I got, if your success metrics is keeping your clients happy, because I work agency life, and that's kind of more vague. It's less quantifiable. You do your best, but sometimes you will get kind of more qualitative metrics, and you'll have to roll with those and make sure your clients are happy. But even those you can kind of break down on your own. There's certain tasks you can do to make sure clients are happy. And kind of read behind the lines too. Like, to make sure your clients are happy, you need to have, at least in my job, you need to have certain skills in Google Analytics 4, Looker Studio, Google Tag Manager, and you need to develop those skills. So I think the next big mistake, completely related to what I just mentioned, is that you need to stay vigilant and develop the skills, behaviors, everything needed to hit those success metrics as soon as possible, but then continue to maintain them. And I think that's probably the biggest thing that I've seen that have kind of caused kind of a slip. So one thing I've encountered is when you get hired and you don't have all these skills, maybe you have 80% of them or 60%, you need to make sure you get all those skills as soon as possible. Even if it means spending a few hours after work every day or every week. Sometimes it's just like 5 hours a week, extra dev time, professional development time, to level up on those skills and really make sure you nail them. When you don't, and you kind of rest on your laurels, that's when things happen. That's when you're not able to deliver certain things. You're completely flabbergasted as to how to solve the problem because you don't have the skills to solve the problem. When you don't have those hard skills and you don't develop them, and let's say sometimes you only work, I've seen it where you only work during your job, and then once you clock out, you don't spend any time outside of work developing those skills. You're just naturally moving to a point where maybe the client's unhappy, maybe your boss is unhappy, and then boom, you get to that point of just you lose the job. So you don't want that to happen, and that is why I truly believe the people who are a bit more neurotic, anxious, paranoid, there's even a book about this called Only the Paranoid Survive. Those types of people tend to keep their job. And you don't have to have extreme paranoia or anything, but just a little bit kind of keeps you on your toes. And unfortunately, I think that the people who are just kind of too relaxed and ignorant, what ends up happening is they get hit in the face with some managerial feedback review session meeting, and then they're completely surprised when they're told, dude, you haven't been hitting your numbers, you haven't been able to do certain things, you really need to step it up. And so unfortunately, that's something that if you get to that point, that's already a red flag. That means you've missed a lot of the initial signs to the point where now they have to explicitly tell you. And then on top of that, you don't want to be in situations, and this does happen, where even after that first wake-up call where you're explicitly told, you're too lax on developing these skills to the point where, you know, eventually they just have to let you go. Or it's a point where you don't have time to develop these skills anymore. You're given a timeline to, you know, get there, and it's not enough time because these skills aren't like easy to develop in such a short amount of time until you hit that deadline, and then, you know, it's over. So point being, I really think just certain qualitative traits, but to develop hard skills, soft skills, to get to where you need to go is really important. And I think there's a certain level of vigilance, anxiety, paranoia, whatever you want to call it, neuroticism, that gets you to those milestones. 3 months, 6 months, 1 year, a year and a half. And then once you pass there, that's really where you should get to a point where, yeah, then you can relax, then you can enjoy life, then you can feel like I'm locked in here, and you can feel like, yes, I've been at this company for a year and a half, and I'm confident that I'm a valued person, they're happy with my performance, and really making sure that you want to still stay there, you still want to knock it out of the park, but at that point you can really relax, enjoy life, and not be so caught up with that anxiety. But up until that point, a little bit is really helpful. And even once you get to a year and a half, that doesn't mean you just completely zone out and clock out. You're still delivering a lot of value, but you can kind of relax a bit. I mean, you've been there for a while. And then the last big tip I want to give you is sometimes you really have to make it a point. Maybe it's once a quarter or once every 6 months, but you have to make a point to check in with your manager and pull out that feedback. Am I hitting my success metrics based off your perception? Is there anything I can improve? Where do I stand in the company? Is it like job threatening? Am I doing great? Am I not? And that's really important because there's perception and then there's reality. And maybe you are doing a good job, but you're not communicating it clearly to your manager. Or your manager is so busy that they don't check in and they just look at little glimpses of your performance, and it's really off base from reality. You have to really make sure, depending on your company, that it's set in stone. I've seen that happen before, where in certain companies, which are just kind of much more hectic and chaotic, there's been times where I've just literally been placed with the CEO, and he was so busy that he only saw like glimpses of my performance. And if those glimpses look negative just by bad luck or chance, then you could be doing really well, and then that's all they see. And then on top of that, if they're super busy and then they just kind of check in on you, and then they may not even be able to give feedback, or they'll forget about that. And because of that, you may be blindsided when all of a sudden they're like, oh, I don't think you're doing good, because you never got the clues before that. So ideally, and this comes back to, obviously choosing the right company, choosing the right culture, and then choosing a manager to work with that coalesces with you and that you can check in on a reasonable period, and a company that, some companies have built-in performance review periods. But especially if you don't have a company who has those things, first off, you should have screened for that and chose a good company in the job interview process, because you're also doing some choosing. You're not just chasing around. But once you are in that company, you got to make sure you have these things, these check-ins, to check for those clues and get a pulse for how your manager is feeling about you. If your manager is too busy or it's not built into the system already, you have to make it happen to make sure that you have a good, clear pulse on how your manager is feeling about you at all times. That will be a great indicator to just make sure you're not completely off base and ignorant and just happy-go-lucky. There's pros and cons to a happy-go-lucky personality type. One is you're just much more carefree at all times. Maybe you just kind of have great body language and you convince others that to be in a good mood. There's benefits to having that carefree mindset, but one of the cons for sure is being completely blindsided because you're completely too carefree, never anxious, never neurotic, and you missed all these clues showing that you were slowly slipping to the point of being let go. So you don't want that to happen. As you can tell, I'm more on the neurotic side, but it's really helped me stay on top of my game, as well as stay on top as a top performer at my companies that I've worked for.